The Marshall Islands, a nation in the Pacific Ocean, is vanishing. Every year, thousands of people leave their tropical paradise for an unexpected destination, landlocked Arkansas, in the middle of America. You might think they're fleeing rising seas and climate change, but that's not the main reason. So, what makes it nearly impossible to live here nowadays? Long before the Marshall Islands made headlines for sinking into the sea, these scattered coral atolls were home to one of the most remarkable seafaring cultures in human history. Picture this, a civilization so in tune with the ocean that young boys would float on their backs for hours, learning to read the patterns of the waves beneath them. While other cultures looked to the stars for navigation, the Marshallese could find their way across thousands of miles of open ocean simply by feeling the motion of the water. But this raises an intriguing question. How did a culture so perfectly adapted to life on these islands end up abandoning them in massive numbers? The answer involves three distinct forces, and none of them is what you might expect. The story begins in 1857, when the first Western missionaries arrived on these shores. But it wasn't their religion that would ultimately threaten the Marshallese way of life. Instead, it was what came next, a series of events so devastating that they would fundamentally alter the relationship between the Marshallese people and their beloved ocean. The transformation began during World War II, when these peaceful islands became the center of a fierce battle between Japan and the United States. But even after the war ended, the real nightmare was just beginning. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States conducted 67 nuclear tests on these islands, the equivalent of detonating 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day for 12 years straight. The nuclear testing did more than just contaminate the land and water. It created the first wave of Marshallese refugees, as entire communities were forced to abandon their radioactive homes. But more importantly, it changed the relationship between the Marshallese and their environment. The ocean, once their greatest ally, had become tainted. The land, once their provider, was poisoned. This profound shift in their connection to their homeland would set the stage for the mass exodus we're witnessing today. But the nuclear legacy is just the first piece of this complex puzzle. To understand why people are leaving the Marshall Islands today, we need to look at two more forces that are reshaping this nation. Forces that are threatening to erase an entire culture from the map. When you ask Marshallese people why they're leaving their homeland, most don't mention nuclear contamination or even rising seas. Instead, they talk about something far more immediate. What could be so urgent that it's causing people to abandon their ancestral lands even faster than climate change? The answer lies in the numbers, but not the ones you might expect. While the Marshall Islands has a land area roughly the size of Washington, D.C., its ocean territory is nearly 3 times the size of Texas. This vast disparity between land and sea has always been part of Marshallese identity. But in recent years, it's become the source of an unprecedented crisis. The Marshall Islands are facing 3 major challenges that are making life increasingly unsustainable. The first is economic. With limited land for agriculture and industry, the country's economy has become almost entirely dependent on foreign aid. The minimum wage is just $2 per hour, and unemployment hovers around 36%. For many families, the choice to leave isn't about the environment, it's about survival. This economic pressure has created a unique phenomenon. While most climate refugees around the world struggle to find new homes, Marshallese citizens have a direct path to the United States. Thanks to an agreement signed in 1986, any Marshallese person can live and work in the U.S. indefinitely without a visa. It's a privilege born from their nuclear legacy, but it's become an escape route from economic hardship. But this raises another question. Of all places in America, why are so many Marshallese choosing to settle in Springdale, Arkansas, about as far from the ocean as you can get? In Springdale, a community of over 10,000 Marshallese people has created a little piece of their homeland in the middle of America. They work in poultry processing plants and factories, send money back to their families on the islands, and maintain their traditions in surprising ways. But perhaps most importantly, they're creating a blueprint for what might become an even larger migration in the coming decades. The Arkansas connection began with one man, John Moody, who moved there in 1979 for better opportunities. Word spread back home about the jobs available in poultry plants and factories. Family followed family, creating a chain migration that has turned this landlocked town into the largest Marshallese community outside the Marshall Islands. Today, only around 40,000 people remain on the islands, meaning that over 25% of the population now live in Arkansas. But while economics might be driving people away today, an even larger threat looms on the horizon. The Marshall Islands is facing a challenge that no amount of adaptation can solve, and it's happening faster than anyone predicted. When scientists first warned about climate change threatening the Marshall Islands, they predicted the nation might become uninhabitable by 2100. But something unexpected is happening that's accelerating this timeline dramatically. It's not the dramatic waves crashing over seawalls, but something far more dangerous. The Marshall Islands' average elevation is just 7 feet above sea level, but it's not the height of the ocean that's the biggest threat. It's what's happening beneath the surface. As sea levels rise, saltwater is seeping into the island's freshwater aquifers. This saltwater intrusion is poisoning crops, killing vegetation, and contaminating drinking water supplies. During high tides, water bubbles up through the ground in coastal areas, creating pools of saltwater that never fully drain away. These king tides, once rare events, now flood neighborhoods multiple times per year. Scientists have discovered that long before the islands are physically submerged, they will become uninhabitable due to a lack of fresh water. Some estimates suggest this could happen as soon as 2035, just over a decade from now. Communities on some of the outer islands are already facing critical water shortages. The implications are staggering. While other coastal regions might be able to build seawalls or move to higher ground, the Marshall Islands have no higher ground to retreat to. Every inch of land is vulnerable, and engineering solutions that might work elsewhere are simply not feasible on these fragile coral atolls. But here's where this story takes an unexpected turn. While thousands of Marshallese are moving to places like Arkansas, others are refusing to give up their homeland without a fight. They're developing innovative solutions that could not only save their own islands, but also provide a blueprint for other threatened coastal communities around the world. The Marshallese government has rejected the label of climate refugees for its people. Instead, they're advocating for what they call migration with dignity, a planned, organized relocation that allows them to preserve their culture and identity even as they adapt to a changing world. And this brings us to the most important question of all. Is the fate of the Marshall Islands a preview of what's to come for coastal communities worldwide? The answer may surprise you, and it reveals something profound around the future of human civilization in an era of climate change. The Marshall Islands isn't just a cautionary tale about rising seas or nuclear legacy. It's a living laboratory for how humanity might adapt to an increasingly unstable world. While some Marshallese are creating new communities in places like Arkansas, others are developing innovative ways to preserve their homeland. They're experimenting with floating agriculture, artificial islands, and new forms of water management. The Marshall Islands may be on the front lines of climate change, but their response to this crisis offers hope for all of us. They're showing that even in the face of seemingly impossible challenges, human ingenuity and cultural resilience can create new pathways forward. Because in the end, the story of the Marshall Islands isn't just about a paradise lost. It's about a people who are refusing to let their culture sink beneath the waves, even if their islands do. And in their struggle and adaptation, they might just be showing us all how to navigate the uncertain waters that lie ahead.